Welcome back and a fresh welcome to others. Welcome to the MIPIM Asia Awards Forum. Now, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Desmond So, and I'm delighted to be your host for this digital version of MIPIM Asia Awards Forum. The MIPIM Asia Awards Forum is a digital edition allowing followers to learn from Asia industry leaders to gauge the risks and rewards and key success factors for Asian markets and to effectively apprehend cultural specificities. In the next 2 hours or so, I have the pleasure of speaking with industry leaders and experts to get their perspectives on hot topics. We're going to get started right away. I'm delighted that our first speaker is Stanley Ching, Senior Managing Director, Managing Partner, and Head of Real Estate Group at CITIC Capital Holdings Limited.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now, Stanley, congratulations, first of all, on Hefei ID Mall winning the Mixed Use Development Gold Award in 2017, and Lane 189 also picked up the Best Retail Development. Of course, with everything that's going on in the world right now, retail sector is experiencing a lot of challenges with the lockdowns and social distancing measures imposed by various governments around the world. How has China performed this past year?
Well, Desmond, I think you were giving me a very easy and a difficult question. I think basically the retail sector has been hit the hardest during the pandemic, and China was not an exception. However, I think China has done a tremendous job in order to bring the business back to normal. I can still recall that what happened, that the government just announced the lockdown, pretty much all the social activities, commercial activities in mid of February last year. And it caught everyone by surprise because at that time, Wuhan, there was an outbreak, and the other cities seems they're not that bad, but the government made a very decisive decision just to close down everything. So we were affected very badly because we own a couple of shopping malls. All the shopping mall has to be closed except for the supermarket, pharmacy, and the daily necessity shops. So we don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know what is the next step by the government. But very fortunately, I think that was the right decision to close down everything, to lock down everything, because very soon China was very much under control. The pandemic was very much under control in many of the provinces and the cities. And starting from late of March and early April, we were allowed to gradually to reopen the business. So they started very smartly that allowed the retail shops that you don't have too many people together to start first, to resume the business first, then gradually extended to food and beverages. And by almost like July or August, that even the most constant, the areas that the government had the hardest control, for example, like the cinemas, the kids, like playgrounds, they were all allowed to reopen. But still, the measures was there. And so if we look at the number, I'm very fortunately that I have the first-hand number to show our audience that in general, the retail business in China in last year was hit hard in February, March, and April, but rebounded very quickly. And so if we look at all years, the whole year number, basically the total sales is about 85 to 90% back to normal, comparing with 2019.
It's not bad at all.
And if we look at the NOIs, because the government also provided some incentives, they cut the tax, they allowed maybe a late repayment of the bank loans. So that helps also very much to the operators. So if we look at the NOI number, the net operating income number, that was down by between 5 to 10% for our portfolio. So if we look at this number and compare with elsewhere in the world, I think that is a very impressive number. That's not all. If we look at the luxury sectors, they actually perform better than 2019. Okay. If we look at our winner, the earlier winner, Hang Lung Plaza 66, I think their number in 2020 is much better than 2019, and they expect that trend to continue. Because I think because of the lockdown, people cannot travel to overseas for shopping, for leisure, so they all stay in China to spend money. Still there is a demand for them to purchase luxury goods, and there's still an appetite for nice things. So actually, for the luxury shopping malls, the luxury brands, they outperformed most of the other sectors. So I would say China really recovers very, very smoothly and quickly. I think that's attributed to few factors. One is the very decisive decision by the government to lock down everything and to control the pandemic. And the second is also the industry players like ourselves, the shop owners, the shopping mall owners. They all work together to find a solution. And before you know, business basically back to normal. So I think we are looking forward a very strong year next year. This year, 2021.
Okay. Now, you had touched on this already. There's a travel ban. That's why you're saying there might be more domestic spending because people can't travel. Now, with the limit on travel, do you see investment opportunities increasing or decreasing in the coming year?
Well, I think it's still a little bit too early to tell. But I would argue that we are still seeing very strong demand from the investors' perspective. First of all, because of the pandemic, people actually see China as a country as basically is the most stabilized. All the performance, all the and rebound very quickly. And this is a sector probably that the people will look for more opportunities. They will see, if we look at the global space, that China probably is a place that the people might want to increase their exposure. Secondly, I think most of the, I would say, significant investors, they all have a presence in China. So within China, there's no travel ban. People, their team in China, based in China, they can still travel, they can still do due diligence, to still do project visits. And on the other hand, because of the, in general, people will see, because of the pandemic, also have some impact to, for example, developers, some of the asset owners. They might want to, lower their price a little bit. So making the investment opportunity more attractive to some of the investors, I would say. So I would not. I think the transaction activity in China will still be pretty stable, I would say. But then again, if compared with other part of the world, I think they certainly will outperform.
Outperform, okay. Are there any regions in China or specific sectors that you would bring attention to, that you would find especially attractive?
Well, I think if people look at it, and then the sector that benefit a lot, or obviously the benefiting from the pandemic is the two sectors. One is the logistics, the other one is the IDC, which that you need to use a lot of data because people shop more online, and then there's more data centers in need. And logistics centers, people will think, people on the other hand, they actually increase their shopping activities online, and then there's a need for logistics.
Yeah, for sure, because they're definitely friends of mine or relatives who have never touched online retail before, but this year has changed all of that.
Yes, definitely, yeah. But we'll still argue there are other opportunities. We like retail as well. We like office as well. So it just really depends on which sector you're looking at and where are the value you are going to find. Okay, Stanley, thank you very much for that sharing. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, good to be here. Our next interview will be conducted by Nicholas Wong, partner at the Townsend Group. I will now invite him on stage and he will introduce his guest.
Good morning, François. Just to let you know that I paid big money to replace Desmond to interview you.
Good luck. Don't give up your day job.
Thank you very much for chairing the 14th edition of MIPIM Asia Awards. Please share with us what you thought of this year's submission compared to the last few years.
Well, listen, I think what strikes me when I look at the submissions, and we together went through it, is the large amount of submissions coming from China. So, whatever you say about China, the country is moving, the projects are coming in. I mean, 81 projects in the middle of the pandemic, and China was hit early on in that crisis, and through good management got out of it early as well, as Stanley was just saying before. And so for me, that just shows, of course, it's a big country, so it's normal that you have a lot of projects, but it also shows that the quality of, I think, what's being done now in real estate in China is really improving. You have now urban regeneration program, which you didn't see some years before, retail repositioning projects. So there's a lot to be learned, I think, from what's happening in China. And then, as I mentioned in my introduction, I was just surprised by Hong Kong. Hong Kong has had a rough year, when you think about it, all sort of crises happening at the same time. And despite all of that, I saw the projects coming out of Hong Kong were creative, innovative, quite daring, like the K11 complex and the retail. So it shows you that communities have a way to go on and survive despite, either the uncertainty or events which can happen. So in a year or where maybe people are not so optimistic, I think these are all sorts of optimism for me as an institutional investor.
Oh, great. Thanks, François. Well, Allianz is one of the largest real estate investor in the world. Like, obviously, we're still facing a lot of challenges because of COVID. How about for you, as a real estate investor? What do you see around the world, and what are your challenges, key challenges for this year or maybe in the next few years?
I think the challenge of most institutional investors is that they want and need to invest in real estate. Okay, the asset class became indispensable in a portfolio construct in a low yield environment. Okay, so there is definitely, as an investment manager on behalf of Allianz, there is definitely a pressure to invest. Then the question is, how do you do that in the current environment? You would have thought that maybe, of course, the COVID situation was an impediment. And to some extent it is, because if you cannot travel, if you cannot see the assets, it's very difficult. I would say it's impossible to make acquisitions, where we, Allianz, made a choice which in a way paid off last year and this year, that we decided to have a lot of regional and local offices with local teams, not all the teams in one location, either Singapore or Paris or New York. We have multiple offices in all three continents, and that enable us to keep going. If today you don't have an office in China, it's very difficult to do meaningful business there and keep the pace of investment. So that was one, I think, of the lessons. The second aspect is a matter of calculated risk, meaning you are in an environment where because of the unprecedented support the governments are giving as well, I think that was one of the lessons learned from this COVID crisis, is that governments did whatever it took, and in terms of plans, to help the economy, and that sort of ensured a low interest rates environment, and that, of course, sort of the bedrock of real estate investments. If you believe that rates will remain low, I think you can be a little bit more daring in your investment policy. And then finally comes, your assessment on the industry, on the sectors, because there, fortunately or unfortunately, there will be winners and losers. Some sectors will do better than others. Some cities will do better than others. Some buildings will do better than others. That's the beauty of real estate, and therefore, you have to then be vigilant, and on top of things, to invest in those sectors where the NOI grows will come out. I think an element Stanley also mentioned in his previous segment.
Great. François, you used to be an Asia CEO. Now you're a global CEO. How does Asia stack up compared to other opportunities around the world?
I think Asia stacks up very well. It stood up quite well in 2020. Actually, Asia was our biggest geography in terms of investment amount. Over 1.2 billion invested in that region. So definitely a region of focus. Because Asia managed the crisis quite well, the COVID crisis, and it's sort of, in a way, I mean, out of it is a big word, but has managed it quite well. Look at the growth rate in China, expected to be around 8% this year. So definitely, if you are looking for growth areas, I think Asia remains still one of the best regions. It's not the only one. I think we need to watch the US. I know the US is going through a difficult time as well, but the unprecedented stimulus which is coming with the new administration will definitely boost the economy over the next 18 months. Then, of course, Asia is also the mega trends, which we are looking for in our investments. We want to invest with conviction. And one mega trend is, of course, what we call the beds and sheds, logistics and residential. And if you look at logistics, it's a global asset class, and Asia is just a part of it, like a third of it. So we continue to invest in logistics in Asia. The second aspect is residential. A country like Japan offers extremely good, in my view, risk-adjusted returns for residential through a combination of very stable NOI and very competitive financing. So that's another segment, in which we have positioned ourselves quite a lot. And then finally, you have urbanization. Urbanization is still ongoing, and I know in Europe or maybe in the US, people have questions, work from home, where people want to live in big cities. We took the view that once the COVID is finished, big cities, dense cities, urbanized areas are still going to be the areas in which you should invest, because they gather the most opportunities for people, for young people. They offer the best choice of potential users when you have a building there. And of course, there is no other region in the world which, is characterized by urbanization. If you look at the top cities in the world, so if you believe in that model and you believe that people will want to live in big cities, go to the office, maybe with the flexibility as a complement to work from home from time to time, then I think Asia remains a very attractive part of the world for a global investor like us, and we will continue to focus on that region with the team under the leadership of Raj Desai, which we have over there.
Well, it looks like logistics is hot on everybody's strategy. So after COVID, have you adjusted your strategy at all? Or you're basically doing the same thing? You think this is just an aberration? COVID is just maybe just wipe out 2020, you keep going on, or you have adjusted your strategy?
I think what COVID has done, it has focused our strategy on things which we had already identified before, meaning logistics was already an asset class which institutional investors were going into. I think COVID has just accelerated the desire to increase your allocation to that asset class. The impact of technology on real estate was already there. I think COVID has accelerated it, and therefore designing the office not just as a place to work, or even less so a place to do emails, but a place to exchange or a place to do events, I think has become even stronger. I think the one area which, in my view, has really come even stronger out of COVID is ESG. The focus on developing green buildings, sustainable buildings, buildings which basically will get you to a carbon neutral status by 2050, which is basically the goal of the European Union. And with the Paris Accord, which the US is rejoining, will become as well. And China is already very well focused on that. So I think we should not underestimate how important it will be, not just for tenants and users, but also for investors, to basically position themselves on buildings which basically have the highest green standard. And by that, I just don't mean just to have a green certificate, but a true path of reduced energy intensity and carbon footprint, which can be reduced every year on that path towards a zero emission portfolio at the end of that period. I think that is really COVID has been, strangely enough, an accelerator of that aspect.
Thank you, François. It has been a pleasure interviewing you.
Nick, it was a pleasure to exchange with you as always. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Well, our next conversation will be with Donald Choi, Chief Executive Officer of Chinachem Group. Donald, welcome.
Hello.
Earlier, I had spoken with Stanley, and he had told us that, of course, the retail sector has been one that has been hit pretty hard. Another one, of course, is hotel and hospitality. It's suffering, but reinvesting itself at the same time across the globe. As an investor in various assets, including a hotel group, what are the biggest challenges ahead for the Asian hotel sector?
Well, I think it's finding a new business model, really. I think we see a lot of travelers that are going to stay home. Business find out that they don't really need to travel to do business. Working at home is just as efficient. So we really need to find a new business model where the hotel is not just a room to stay in and sleep, but actually it offers kind of unique experience, for people to gather together. And for us, especially, we'll be looking for the long stay, co-living, the staycation for the local. I think all of those actually require the hotel operations to change their traditional mode of practice. And it is not just because of the COVID-19. Before the COVID, I think we already see competitors with very innovative, disruptive business model coming in. For example, Airbnb. So again, it's back to how we can use the hotel platform to really create a community of people, travelers, that they no longer just use the physical space of the hotel, but they actually use the platform created by the hotel operation to make connection with business partner, with friends, and enjoy a really unique experience when they come to the particular place.
Yeah, you talk of this business model change. Once again, this word staycation, some people were familiar with the term before, but now I think it's really entered the mainstream vernacular. And you almost ask who this year didn't have a staycation, right? Now, from an investment standpoint, Donald, do you think the hotel investment will change or evolve in the future as we cope with COVID-19 or something similar in the future?
Well, I think when we look at the hard assets, I think, as I mentioned just now, it's not just the room that matters. So, the ability to provide more common space, amenities, to support the guests, using the hotels, all of those additional value-added service become very important. So for the investor, I think when you look at investing into a hotel, you are not just looking into a hard asset, but also the software support, the operation, the amenities, the ability of the hotel to offer something else.
Now, if someone was listening to this and they're a hotel operator, given what you say, would you recommend that they refurbish and increase their common space or change their physical space, like you said, because it seems like the traditional hotel room is not enough?
Yeah. Well, it's not just adding common space. I think also people are very much conscious about hygiene, clean air, and also a lot of other facilities that they consider could be not safe in a sense. Previously, common changing room. How comfortable are you? In those places. So again, I think physical renovation to address all these issues is important. Hardware, while it is not the only important thing, it is important in the sense that we can increase the comfort level, the hygiene, safety, comfort.
Okay, I'm going to make you pull out your crystal ball here and ask you the next question, which is, the hotel hospitality sector has been hit hard. Yes. When do you see a rebound from COVID, maybe both in terms of this region and around the world, because obviously the measures have been different?
Yeah. I think Asia will bounce a little bit faster. Again, it's not just only because of the vaccine or COVID, but because the economy in Asia, actually, especially in China, we are seeing a positive growth, so that is good. But it will be in phases, so I think we wouldn't get back to the pre-COVID market probably in 3 to 5 years' time. And we are going to see quite a change in the market as well. As I mentioned, business traveling will not be as frequent. But again, as you mentioned, the staycation, the local travelers is really going to grow. And if you have a large country like China, people can travel from city to city, really still within their own country, which makes traveling much more easier. So investment in Asia, especially in China, still there are lots of opportunities.
Donald, for my last question for you, I want to bring it back to the awards. Was there any project this year that was especially significant in your mind or differentiated itself from projects of years past?
Well, I think we see quite a number of very high quality refurbishment projects. I think that actually is a good trend as well, because for city development, a lot of history, culture has been embedded into the existing city. We don't need to demolish and rebuild everything. By revitalization of existing building, adaptive reuse, we really actually is adding to the richness of cities. And I think for real estate developer, as François mentioned, I think the big city is still something that offers a lot of opportunities because it offers different things to different people. And refurbishment is a way to actually retaining some of those treasures of the old city as well as adding something new to the future user.
Very good point, Donald. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Talking to you.
Hi, Nicholas. Thank you very much for leading us on that very fascinating discussion with François earlier. And also thank you for your contributions over the years in helping guide the jury in evaluating projects submitted to the urban regeneration category. Now, we know you were involved and consulted on numerous regeneration projects in Hong Kong, including Blue Cluster House, which was the gold winner in 2017. Can you share with us some of the challenges and maybe joys and sorrows of that project, please?
I think this is one of, well, I'm a Hong Kong born, raised Hong Konger, so definitely knows this building very, very well. Visited many, many times. And I think it's up to the jury to, of course, there's a committee in Hong Kong that actually select all these projects that is worthy of regeneration. This is one of the very unique one because it's in the very old area and also have very unique architectural design. The challenges, of course, is convincing the owner and then also the community. This is the project to be preserved.
Mm-hmm. Now, are public-private partnerships important? And maybe I take it a step further, not only important, but crucial to success of urban regeneration projects?
I think definitely is very crucial because firstly, a lot of Hong Kong buildings are privately owned. They're not publicly owned. But at the same time, it's in the public interest to preserve the city's culture. So therefore, the public side need to convince the private side. And many times, the public needs to provide some kind of compensation in order for the owner to preserve that particular project. So I think that cooperation is very, very essential. I give you one example. For example, the residence of Bruce Lee in Kowloon Tong. Although a lot of people wanted to preserve that building because Bruce Lee is such a significant character of Hong Kong, but because that cooperation somehow didn't work out, so that building eventually was demolished, and it was not funded properly, and then the owner didn't have the funding to continue to preserve the building because it's getting old. So I think that's one prime example of the failure of this private and public partnership.
Now, that's a good point because sometimes public interest and private interests do conflict. Can you give some insight into when that conflict comes up, how it can be resolved, or how the two sides can kind of meet eye to eye?
Well, I think Hong Kong is unique. It's like because Hong Kong is densely populated, and then it also have one of the highest real estate value in the world. And older buildings in general have lower density, therefore is not worth a lot. So when you redevelop and then build to the highest possible, then of course it generates a lot more value. So therefore, I think many times that the government needs to provide some certain compensation. But at the same time, this compensation come out from the taxpayers' money. If this money needs to be a big substantial, that a lot of people would say, well, you're transferring wealth from one part of the society into the owner of this part. Another example on the mid level, for example, on Stubbs Road, there was a big project, like have historic Chinese characteristics.
The green tiles, yes.
Eventually that was also demolished because obviously the government could not afford to pay the owner all this money to preserve the building. And then, so it's a shame. So I think Hong Kong is unique is that it's worth so much money for this kind of a historic location.
Okay. Well, you've talked about Hong Kong and some of the specific challenges here. I want to bring it up a little bit, Asia in general. In Asia, do you see any countries that can benefit or should be more proactive in urban regeneration projects?
I think some countries, for example, Australia, I give you also a sample, is like most of the building with a facade, they are preserved. And then you build new building behind that. But it is a government policy, has been there for a long time. So when new owner come in to buy that project, that aspect has already incorporated into the calculation. Therefore, they are able to do that. For like cities like Beijing or Shanghai, for example, is government driven. The government wants to preserve that because they know these are a strong culture because that, so I think, obviously those have had a lot of success.
Okay, my final question is the same one that I asked Donald earlier. In this year's projects, was there anyone that was significant for you, either from a design or a personal feeling that you just had for the project that stuck out in your mind?
Well, I think definitely K11 is that project because, as I mentioned, I was raised in Hong Kong, so I used to go to the New World Center when I was very young, and then that was already command a panoramic view of Hong Kong Island. Of course, it's already a very significant project, but it was torn down and then totally rebuilt into of course, it's a fantastic project, in every aspect. But of course, obviously, a New World Group, spare no expense to redevelop that, and therefore, it turned up to be, such a gem. And I think with that location and with that structure, I think definitely is the new landmark of Hong Kong.
Yeah, for sure. I think for anyone who has lived long enough to see the old site of where New World used to be, it really is a game changer.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Desmond.
The network here at MIPIM is always the best. You get everyone from all the different industries, the related industries.
process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
The Executive Center makes choosing a workspace simple. Award-winning interiors, prime locations, and personalized services. Enjoy complete flexibility when it comes to private offices, co-working, virtual offices, and events. Our team of experts will find what space works for you. The Executive Center.
The network here at MIPIM is always the best. You get everyone from all the different industries, the related industries.
The Executive Center makes choosing a workspace simple. Award-winning interiors, prime locations, and personalized services. Enjoy complete flexibility when it comes to private offices, co-working, virtual offices, and events. Our team of experts will find what space works for you. The Executive Center.
The network here at MIPIM is always the best. You get everyone from all the different industries, the related industries.
I don't deny there's some strange evolutionary process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
The Executive Center makes choosing a workspace simple. Award-winning interiors, prime locations, and personalized services. Enjoy complete flexibility when it comes to private offices, co-working, virtual offices, and events. Our team of experts will find what space works for you. The Executive Center.
The network here at MIPIM is always the best. You get everyone from all the different industries, the related industries.
I don't deny there's some strange evolutionary process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
All right, in this next segment, I'm delighted to be speaking with Richard Yue. Richard is Chief Executive Officer and Chief Investment Officer at Arch Capital Management. Richard, thank you for being with us.
Desmond.
And thank you for being an awards jury member. As we enter the 14th edition of the awards, can you share how residential development submissions have evolved?
Sure. Time flies. It's our 14th year. Over the years, I think all the submissions are very good. Just to kind of recap, our main kind of judging criteria, of course, is design. So the aesthetic is very important. And then the project has to blend in very nicely with its neighborhood. And then we go down the list. Over the years, I think we're stressing more and more on environmentally friendly projects and sustainability, the whole ESG. So over the years, we're seeing increasing focus on that area. And actually, we give them a lot of credits if they do a good job on that. So efficiency on energy, water, and the whole zero carbon front, that score high marks with us. So it's more than just a nice building.
Do you think projects are kind of doomed if they don't kind of at least take a step in that ESG direction?
Actually, if you look at a residential project now, you almost expect there's an element of that. Often it's the landscaping, the greenery that surrounds a project. What is challenging for us is when you have a jurisdiction where you can allow to have more horizontal and low density projects, competing in jurisdictions like Hong Kong where everything is tall and dense. So you put those projects against each other, it's harder to judge.
Yep.
So, but we've been getting very, very good submissions. And earlier, François and Nick has touched upon, we're getting submissions from more and more from other parts of Asia. Initially, a lot of the resi projects come out of Hong Kong and Singapore. Now, actually, we're seeing a more well-rounded entry. So we're very pleased about that.
Are there any markets apart from Hong Kong and Singapore that has caught your eye where you expect to see some really exciting stuff come out of?
Japan has done, there's been very, very good entries from Japan. In China, in Southeast Asia, I think India, Indonesia, Malaysia, they all have strong entries. So, yeah.
Something to look out for.
Yeah.
Now, as an asset manager, obviously you invest and you told me you guys significantly develop residential as well. Looking to the future, COVID-19 has significantly changed our lives. Do you think the design of residential projects will change in light of what's been going on?
I think that's a very good question. As we live in the middle of COVID, all of us are spending more time at home. I was actually at the office this morning. We're supposed to work from home this week. Everyone's at the office. I said, what are you guys doing here? He said, well, this is home. Yeah. In fact, people do spend a lot of time working. Going forward, I do see all the asset class kind of merging. You're working out of home, you're spending a lot of time at the office, so it's merging. So the design actually will change. For us, I think traditionally there's been a trend towards kind of open layouts in the homes, especially in parts of the world where people actually can afford more space.
Yes, yes.
But during COVID, the open layout becomes very challenging. For instance, I could be having a Zoom call or Zoom meeting, my wife could be having a Zoom call, and then my kids have online classes, right? You almost have to go back to, where you have to cut up the space for individual functions. So I think for residential design, we will see more specific area designated for different use. Okay. Acoustics, that whole kind of home office functionality will merge. So it will be quite interesting. And also, I think, as we spend more time at home, I think people tend to cook more, they gather more. I think kitchen is an area where people actually spend a lot of time in. So right. I think, a lot of my friends actually learn how to cook. Yeah. My wife are always looking at cookbooks. So I think, investment in a nice kitchen is something that you need to do more. Online shopping creates all kinds of logistics issues if you live in a vertical building. So unless you have a concierge or reception, all these packages that come in every day, it's a challenge. So a lot of these things will change. Over time.
I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. Hearing what you have just said, does that mean you think work from home is going to stick around?
To a certain extent, I think, as long as it's safe to go back to work, I think a lot of people will go back to work. But in Asia, where it's people live in very small home, like I said earlier, unless you have a big home, you can have different areas designated for different use. I found my whole team at the office. So and earlier, François talked about collaboration of ideas. Office is really where people collaborate, they engage, they interact socially, and spark, ideas come. I think that will never change. But, I think people will stress more about where they live and how the living space is designed. So
from my experience and what I hear from my friends and colleagues, same thing. Even when they have the option to work from home, here in Hong Kong at least, sometimes and often they choose to go back to the office. Yes. Yeah.
So in one of our projects, we're actually making the office more homey. So that when you actually go into work, there are corners and nooks where you feel like you're actually not just at a glass, cold kind of office.
But don't make it too nice, otherwise people aren't going to go home. I want to change focus and talk about property prices. Obviously, in Asia, many property markets are quite expensive, and there's an argument say that the young generation has been priced out. Co-living has been viewed as a possible solution to this, and of course, often it caters to the young generation who absorb, are able to accept this co-living environment. They find it fun, they find it refreshing. Do you share this view, and in your opinion, will the current pandemic affect the growth of this sector?
A very good question. Actually, I would split that question. Rising property prices does create issues, especially for the younger generations. So the whole co-living definition, actually, people define co-living differently. Sure. Some people, the general definition for us is just we're providing quality micro service apartments for people. And it provides flexibility. So in terms of the term of the lease and so on, it's flexible. It's less expensive, but you also give them less space. So that's kind of our definition of co-living. Now, younger generations, they tend to like to mingle and they like to meet and so on. So generally, these assets would have areas where they can share space, like a nice living room where you don't actually have to have your own living room, but you can share. Sure. A kitchen, a nice kitchen with the right, the appliances and nice appliances and so on. During the pandemic, of course, these areas are probably less used, but the key is you can hide in your own micro space, well furnished with great Wi-Fi, have your own bathroom and so on. So we find that actually that's caught on. In fact, we're rolling this business out regionally. We're actually seeing a lot of demand for these type of products all over Asia. Yeah.
Well, I think residential, obviously, near and dear to many people's hearts. So thank you for your sharing, Richard, and we look forward to seeing more submissions and what the residential sector is going to do.
Thank you, Desmond.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
The network here at MIPIM is always the best. You get everyone from all the different industries, the related industries.
I don't deny there's some strange evolutionary process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
The whole industry is this week in the south of France.
MIPIM has always been kind of the vanguard of showing where the future may go.
In 4 days, you probably have as many meetings as you would have during 3 or 4 months. So this is a business accelerator.
We meet with a lot of people. We have opportunity to do leasing, buying, selling, financing.
Every year there's something new that I'll discover, but there's no place like this to keep the pulse of what's happening in the industry.
The real attraction is you've got people from all the different elements of the real estate sector, architects, surveyors, developers, investors, and I think it's a great way for that community to come together. MIPIM is also always looking at new themes, whether it be prop tech, new business models, the evolution of the real estate sector generally.
To really talk about where the industry is going, certainly in terms of the property and the commercial markets.
It's going to be much more about the productivity within spaces, the experience.
So we have to transform ourselves into a innovative, technology-based industry.
The future has to be with smart cities and places that people actually want to live.
You're creating much more value by creating a place that has a synergy, that has the capability of establishing a lifestyle pattern.
I don't think this sector will ever do without personal interaction, but tech will become more and more important.
The real value of people will be around the interpretation of the data, the preparation and formulation of strategy.
Frankly, events like MIPIM, I think, will become more significant because they will be those opportunities to be face-to-face.
Business, contacts, friendships. Imagine a world without MIPIM.
Our next speaker is Georges Agethen, Senior Vice President, Asia Pacific of Ivanhoe Cambridge. Welcome.
Hi, Desmond.
Now, as a pension fund investor from North America, how are you guys managing your current Asia portfolio of investments under these COVID times, George?
Yeah, look, Ivanhoe Cambridge has been in Asia and have had people on the ground for close to 15 years now. So we have a team in Hong Kong, in Shanghai, and in Mumbai, covering the region. So when COVID hit, and it's about a year now that we've been living under these conditions, having people on the ground certainly has made it easier. We focus very much on our team's health and safety. So that was pretty important. We were working from home at different speeds in all the different offices, and then obviously working with our partners as well to make sure our properties were well managed. So we went into asset management overdrive, ensuring that at least our stakeholders were well protected during this time. Interestingly, for our organization, we started a work from home program about 6 months before COVID. So when COVID hit, we were pretty able to scale up the IT backbone of the platform. Everybody went back. First Zoom meetings, or we use WebEx, first WebEx and Teams meetings went really smoothly, and then that became our kind of normal course of our business day.
Okay. Yeah. I think another one of our speakers earlier, it might have been François, who mentioned, you have to have people on the ground in order to do real estate. Now, you had mentioned that you guys were in the forefront of work from home. Would you agree with that? Do you have to be kind of on the ground? Would you open more offices in light of this COVID?
That's a really good question, because if I think in the short term, at least in 2020, we got by. We continued to make investments. We obviously paused in the first half of the year because we weren't too sure what was going on. But then as we saw how Asia in particular managed the pandemic slightly better than other places, our confidence levels went up to make further investments. But as traditional real estate practitioners, we want to see it, we want to feel it. A lot of our business model depends on finding the right partners and managers and people that help us in the different cities. So that's been quite difficult. So establishing new relationships has been obviously a lot more difficult during this period. But in terms of investing, the team, fortunately, in different cities, but also from different places. We have quite a large number of nationalities that sit here. So when we talk about Sydney or Melbourne or Tokyo or in China, most of the cities in China, we have somebody in the team that actually knows the city, knows the building, knows the location.
Okay. How do you see inbound investment strategy for Asia changing or evolving in the future as a result of something like COVID?
I think Asia was already on the path of becoming more significant for international investors in their global portfolio. Kind of 15, 20 years ago, Asia was probably a more niche component of a global real estate portfolio. There's been a lot of development. There's a lot of really good product now, and we're seeing Asia really becoming a big slice of the pie. So for Ivanhoe Cambridge, we're kind of about 7% of our global portfolio is in Asia. 7, okay. Right? That we're looking to double that in this kind of short, medium term. So the ambitions are great. COVID has just, I guess, reinforced what we felt were longer term trends: urbanization, the rise of e-commerce, and kind of the rising middle class here in Asia. So things that we thought were going to be important for our portfolio over this next decade, that's been accelerated by COVID in a large extent.
Okay. Some of our audience, of course, are very familiar with Asia, and I'm guessing some are not as familiar with Asia. Can you share with us some of the key success factors for Ivanhoe Cambridge in the time that you've been here?
Sure.
Tell the audience about that.
Sure. So the typical way that investors from outside of Asia have invested into Asia is through, I guess, funds. So finding a manager that has a good track record in Asia, and then investing with them in a more passive sense. So they invest and the manager does pretty much most of it. So then building up kind of comfort and understanding of the markets, the dynamics, and then maybe making a few more kind of more direct investments. But the success factors have always remained that Asia is a very diverse place, very complex place, many different countries. It's a little bit different from Europe in that we don't have a common, region or economic zone. So, the laws are different, tax is different, and so that drives some complexity and challenges for investing in the Asian market. So first filter in terms of managing risk, I would say for most of our peers is finding the right partners. Finding the right fiduciary partners, fund managers, developers that you want to work with, that's always been the key success factor before you kind of talk about any kind of real estate projects.
George, off camera, we had talked a little bit about the submissions for this year and in recent times, and you had told me that ESG is something that you've noticed is very prevalent in changing the region. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this year again, really super impressed by the quality of submissions around ESG. We have a separate ESG category, obviously, but pretty much every project in every category has incorporated this. And over the years, ESG was something that was, something that happened in the West, something that maybe you read about, and then the technology and the people and the talent weren't really in Asia. That's really, really changed. Now we're seeing sustainability. We're seeing Asia lead that. A lot of developers and investors lead that here. For us, we have a very ambitious target to reduce our carbon emissions, our carbon footprint in our real estate portfolio. So, from our perspective, how we look to influence the industry is, very soon we will not be making any investments unless those investments kind of add to our low carbon portfolio. So yeah.
Something to look out for.
Sure.
Okay, that was Georges Agethen from Ivanhoe Cambridge. Thank you very much for joining us, George.
Thank you, Desmond. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, and we're back. Next up, we have with us Chris Chow, Senior Managing Director at LaSalle Investment Management. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris, across Asia-Pacific markets, which sectors or regions have been the most resilient during the pandemic, and why do you think they are able to withstand it?
If you look into the resiliency, right, it's really about which of those asset types can maintain the cash flow, the income of the property type. And the other thing to look into is that some of these resiliency, some of these stronger sector has been forming pre-COVID-19. And what we saw from the pandemic is that the winner is not taking all, but the winner is taking more. The way I want to say this is that for logistic warehouse, for example, it has been an institutional asset class in the last several years. When you first went into logistic in Japan and China, for example, 1 or 2 decades ago, it wasn't a institutional investment grade asset type for most of the Asian economies. It has gone into this level of institutional grade asset. With the pandemic, that drive further demand in terms of warehouse in the end user perspective, and also institutional investor demand. We see this is not only just resilient, it's continued to be a winner. And the gap we pull from the loser end of the property type, for example, retail. I think the gap is actually widened a bit more, both from the occupier demand standpoint and as well as from the investor standpoint. So we think that this is quite structural. So this is not fully impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is an extension of the winning and losing track. We'll see that continue to display in a couple of years to come.
So it seems then what you were saying is COVID has accelerated things.
That's right. It has amplified the winner sector and the losing sector.
Right. But then the building, it takes time to build a logistics warehouse. Even though there's more demand, it seems the trend is going there. Are developers able to do that? Because all of a sudden there's more demand, but can they catch up with that demand?
Good question. I think the beauty of logistics in many markets is that has less development risk inherent into those, because we're not building a high-rise building like the office building. Although in some markets like Hong Kong, Japan, that we have multi-story warehouses, But for other markets such as China, we are still doing 1 or 2 story warehouse. We may be doing 3-story warehouse pretty soon, but then those are a bit easier in terms of the construction, but they have also come into other type of challenge. For example, land acquisition could be a challenge for a lot of new entrants of the market. We've been operating in this space, our China team, our Japan in this space for over a decade. So they have good access to land acquisition. I think that's the key in terms of developing, providing supply into this space.
Which markets, either in Asia or around the world, do you think will come out better or stronger as a result of COVID-19?
I tend to think that the COVID-19 is very impactful. The impact is very deep, but could be somewhat temporary. So I think the snapshot that we see today maybe is all linked to how different regions and countries respond to the pandemic happened so far, and then maybe going forward and how effective in terms of getting the people have access to the vaccines. So it's really about how much those impact become long-term structural change. Right now we see pretty good containment of the pandemic in China or Korea. Hopefully they will continue, but it's still yet to be seen who will eventually continue to do well in terms of containing that pandemic in the respective country.
One of the most mature and deepest markets here in Asia Pacific, of course, is Japan. Tell us how Japan real estate has weathered the pandemic, and also could you tell us a little bit about current investors' appetite for that market?
Well, first of all, we have operation in the whole of Asia. We have 6 major destinations that we invest. When François and the other speaker also mentioned George just now, talking about we need to have people on the ground, including Japan market, which is one of the biggest office in Asia Pacific operation. That's also important for people like us to have acquisition, asset management people on the ground to execute all these strategy. That's particularly important for COVID-19 when we have investors or who cannot really come to the country, right, to deploy the investment. So having people on the ground to do it for them is very critical. And Asia is so different in terms of different culture and geographic differences. I think the difference in responding to the pandemic will make it even more difficult to underwrite correctly. So we have used our team basically to do the whole integration from acquisition all the way to asset management. Japan is one of the biggest market. We are investing in all sector types over there. We have different type of strategy from core to opportunistic. I was saying that because of the low interest rate environment in Japan, and it will continue to be the case, is one of the lowest across Asia Pacific region. So the spread that we use in terms of describing the income that you're getting or the returns you're getting from Japan market compared to the risk-free rate is still very healthy. So then this is market continue to not only attract foreign investors, it has been for last many years. I think when I talk to my Japanese colleagues, they also see a good flow of Japanese domestic investor. This will not only they will not only help us in terms of deployment, but will also continue to sustain the growth in the real estate investment market in Japan.
Now, regardless of sector, whether it be residential or logistics or retail mall, a lot of these projects were started in a pre-COVID world. Now that COVID has come along, do you think any of these projects might run the risk of being irrelevant, or how can they adapt to make sure that they stay relevant in a post-COVID world?
Very good point. Depends on which asset type as well. When we are developing warehouses, I think the demand is still strong from the occupying standpoint. And from the end user standpoint, they're also serving the end user in a growth environment. So I think those are okay. Of course, if you're delivering hospitality, you will have the different types of income in terms of timing. It may come in later than you expected. So some of the other players, they may do retail development. They may have to make some changes in terms of how to cope with the shift. The greater shift into e-commerce versus traditional retail. In some locations, right, the traditional retail really becomes an offline, online showroom type of partnership. So I think people can make shift and changes to respond what pandemic has brought to them. Some is just a bit of time. For example, hospitality and lodging, they just need to have those visitors, domestic or overseas, to come back. Some may just have to change in terms of the way they design, they build retail.
My last question for you, Chris, I want to bring it back to the awards. If you compare the submissions from years past to more recent years, are you seeing any kind of big changes in terms of trends, quality of submissions, the kind of projects that get submitted?
I would say that for each of the category, we are seeing some differences in terms of how they approach. Let's say for retail, we have a couple of interesting projects. One from Japan, is the old building they preserved, the original facade of the building, but then they modernize, the inside, which actually have a very good draw because people are coming in for experience nowadays for retail. If you look at one of the award, the K11, when you walk inside, you don't feel the same type of retail environment. It's much softer. I feel a bit like home. So we feel that these winners, they're able to distinguish themselves by leveraging the existing situation, like the one that in Japan, or basically, or the one in K11 that give you a complete new experience on how to give the shoppers a new experience when they come over there.
Okay, Chris Chow, always a pleasure. Thank you for your sharing.
Thank you so much.
Our next interview will be conducted by Francis Lee, International Director, Vice President, Greater China, Head of Capital Markets, Greater China at Cushman & Wakefield. I will now invite him on stage and he will introduce his guest. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce Dr. Justin Chiu. He's a member of the Managing Committee of and Executive Director of Chinachem Group. Justin has been in the industry for 40 years plus, and he's been in Hong Kong and various countries. He also a fellow member of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, and also the honorable board member of the British Hong Kong Bishop College University of Hong Kong. And Justin holds a bachelor degree of arts in sociology and economics. And also he's conferred 2 doctor degrees, one from Hong Kong and one from Trent University of Canada. So this is Dr. Chiu. Marina Bay Financial Center is the winner, the gold winner of the best mixed-use project in Asia, and back in MIPIM Asia 2010, and also the People's Choice Award. It's a very interesting and also one of the best projects in Asia. And can you share with us, because you have 3 partners in this project, including Chinachem Holdings and Hong Kong Land, and also Capital Land from Singapore. So we have 3 partners from Hong Kong, UK, and Singapore. How do you manage the 3 work together in this very big scale mixed-use project in Singapore?
Yeah, thank you, Francis. Actually, the Marina Bay Financial Center is one of the biggest, largest development projects in Singapore. And well, it houses more than 4 million square feet. Wow. You see. At that time, though, when the 3 of us came together, actually we had a joint venture before that. That was in the One Raffles Quay, ORQ. Also in the Marina Bay area, that was our first project. We shared a very good vision, common vision, that we want to build the future of Singapore. So that's why when we first started on the Marina Bay Financial Center, we shared a common vision that we will have the workspace in the future. We also need to develop a future community, a community in the future, and also let people experience of the future. That is very important. So the three partners share the common vision, and that is why we can get along very well in the past, I would say more than 15 years now on this project, because right now we are still managing the project ourselves. We have the Raffles Key Asset Management Company, which is also a joint venture between the three companies. So we are still managing, and we want the occupants there to really experience the future of Singapore. Well, definitely, the three companies come from three different cultural backgrounds. Now we are from Hong Kong, and Hong Kong then is Hong Kong, but they are more or less in Singapore. They call them Amor. Amor means European or foreigners or white people. And then in Singapore we have Keppel Land. So we have slightly different cultural background. But I think for any joint venture partnership, its most important thing is you share the same vision, as I said just now, and then we have the mutual respect. You need to respect your partners, so that because every party has their own contributions to the joint venture, to the success of the joint venture. So you need to respect them, respect the idea, respect how they look at things, and then we can discuss. Definitely, it's not 100% we agree on everything. There are always problems or small disagreements that come up, but we can sit down and then discuss, because we have to show our respect to the other people's contributions and their views. And then we also need to have the mutual trust. I think that is important, because for any joint venture partner, if you don't share the mutual trust, there's no way for the partnership to continue. You have hard feelings from time to time, and you may become suspicious, so to speak, on your partners, why they don't want to do this. Do they have any selfish interests? But in our joint venture partnership, three of us, we never have any suspicion over any others. For example, in the construction side, we comfortably leave it to Keppel Land, because they know Singapore very well. We are from Hong Kong. We cannot claim we know Singapore regulations, we know Singapore authorities, but in Keppel Land, they know them very well. So we comfortably give the duties to Hong Kong Land, and then for in some of the technical issues, we respect the experience of Hong Kong Land. So that's why in some of the design, for example, then we really respect Hong Kong Land's contributions and their suggestions. That is why in phasing out the MBFC, we have the residential first, and then the commercial blocks, and then also the another residential part component before we finish the retail portion. So that's why on all these phases, the three partners sit down together and discuss together, and then we share the common vision that we want to build the future of the community. I think that is important.
So in the foreseeable future, do you see there's the three parties or the three partners will come together again to do another project?
Oh, definitely. Actually, after the MBFC project, we came together and tendered for another project in Singapore, but we were not successful. Because other people offer a higher price for it. But definitely in future, we will find ways so that we can work together again. You see. MBFC is one of the most successful joint venture CITIC Group has. You see. And also, I heard also from Hong Kong Land and Keppel Land, because that was that is a successful project, and we all make a lot of money. You see. We are happy with it.
So apart from Singapore, do you think the three partners would say come to another country and city to take another mega project in Asia?
It depends on opportunities, you see. Because right now, I think the composition is good because we have a very good local partner, the Keppel Land, and Hong Kong Land also knows Singapore very well. And for the CK Group, we have been in Singapore for more than 30 years, so we also know a bit of Singapore. That's why we can share common knowledge, and we can share common vision on the future of Singapore. But if you go to another place like, for example, Cambodia, which is very hot right now, I think we might also need to look for another local partner before we can really follow the joint venture partnership. But whether the new partnership, so to speak, can work, then it really depends on whether at that time, if we can share also the same vision, same mutual respect, and also the same mutual trust.
Yeah. And I have another question purposely asked by Christine, who asked me, given the current situation in Hong Kong, a global under the pandemic, what's the best investment opportunity available to us, especially for us in Hong Kong?
Well, definitely, if you're talking about Hong Kong, I advise you don't only look at Hong Kong. You see. In Hong Kong, within the CK Group, we don't really look at it as Hong Kong anymore. We look at the Greater Bay Area because the 9+2, this is a Greater Bay Area. It's a very important economic momentum. In future, I think in the next 20 years or so, this will become one of the world's center of attraction. People should go. So if you want to invest now, I would recommend you go to the Greater Bay Area. Personally, I would say I would prefer the western part of the Greater Bay Area, like Zhuhai, Zhaoxing, and Zhongshan, because it's less developed.
Okay.
On the western part is very developed, and the eastern part, Zhuhai, Zhongshan, and Zhaoxing, is less developed. But I think they are coming up.
Okay, very good advice. And because of the western part of the Pearl River Delta, I think is still under development.
Actually, we don't talk about the Pearl River Delta anymore. It's always Greater Bay Area. That's important. I mean, the whole concept needs to change. It's the Greater Bay Area, 9+2 cities. You see, So I will concentrate on the opportunities in Zhongshan, Zhuhai, Zhaoxing, and all that, because they are right now they are less developed, but I think they will coming up.
So apart from Hong Kong and GBA, how about the rest of Asia? Any advice for us?
Well, the rest of Asia really depends on how far they can control the pandemic situation. Right now, I think Singapore they have controlled it very well. So Singapore will be one of the first countries that will come back. But in some other countries, they are still facing difficulties. Once you have the social distance, once you have all these control measures in place, then it's difficult for the economy to develop, and that will practically kill all economic activities.
So you did mention about the opportunity in Southeast Asia. Do you think your group will invest down south?
Well, depends on opportunities. If there's good opportunities coming up, why not? You see, I think as a big group, like ours, we only go for opportunities. Whenever there is opportunities, we'll just go ahead. We don't confine ourselves to any geographical location, or we don't confine ourselves to any countries as such. You see, you look for opportunities.
Yeah, that's a very good advice. Follow the opportunity, right, rather than fix your destination.
Because the world is changing fast. You see, there are opportunities coming up every now and then, any place, anywhere. So that's why you have to be on your toes all the time. Try to search for opportunities and try to pick up more contacts. Right now, due to the pandemic situation, we cannot travel, but we can still do it by Zoom meetings. That's what we are doing today. Technology has overcome part of the problem that we cannot meet face to face, but definitely business shall carry on.
Yep, you're perfectly right about that. And thank you very much, Dr. Chiu, and thank you very much for your participation to this interview, which is very good for you to catch up with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For our ninth and final interview, we're delighted to have with us Ellen Ng, Head of China Real Estate at Warburg Pincus Asia LLC. Ellen, Warburg Pincus has been actively investing globally in what we now call new economy investments. This is also a new category that we created for MIPIM Asia Awards in 2020. What are the new economy investments that you feel have the most potential in China?
Right. To frame this a little bit, new economy, by that we refer to all the infrastructure plays, logistics, data centers, technology and biotech parks. And you can even loop in sort of for rental apartments, multifamily into that category, given how nascent that segment is in the context of China across the region. Today that makes up roughly 3/4 of our entire portfolio. So we've been very much, skewed towards those favors asset classes.
Okay. Now, as an institutional investor, what have been some of the challenges that you have faced this year, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Obviously, this year, the past 12 months have been exceptional. I think it happens in different phases. In the initial quarters of the outbreak, in the context of China, Q1, Q2 last year, obviously the key challenge was making sure the banking relationships and people were initially shocked by the disruption, right? And in real estate, you can get the area that you could suffer is if you have too much leverage. So across the portfolio, fortunately, we're very moderately leveraged, but there's still, when there are disruptions to the operations in some of our businesses, that required conversations with banks. But very, very quickly, most of our business have gone back to normalized levels. Our most hit business was actually a car park company in China. At the peak of the pandemic, it was at 20% of utilization. By mid last year, it's already been back to pre-COVID levels. Okay. So it's quite short duration. And then closer to end of last year, I think overall, the challenge was, physically, we can't always be on the ground. So in terms of grooming new relationships and operating partners, it took more innovative, different ways of working with new partners, particularly. That said, most of our team is also on the ground in China, so that had helped, manage some of these relationships.
Now, because your business is in China, China has done a pretty good job in controlling COVID compared with the rest of the world. That has obviously worked in your favor. Do you see that continuing or compare with the rest of the world and as other markets deal with COVID and its implications?
Right, so we're obviously a very interconnected world, and our clients, our LP capital partners are all globally. So, in terms of deployment of capital and the fundamentals of what we have invested in, obviously we're a bit fortunate in that the China economy has gone back to relatively normalized levels sooner, right? But we expect sort of waves and surprises. I think we're now having a bigger appetite for surprises. Sure. But by and large, I think the fundamentals have been very robust. And if anything, the pandemic last year has shown the resilience and the acceleration of some of the growth areas that we are very much focused on in these new economy sectors.
Do you think investment strategies will change or evolve as a result of COVID, both in China and in other parts of the region? And what will those changes look like?
Again, I think the way we've positioned our portfolio, it was not, preparing for the COVID. It was, some of these themes, in our view, are long-term, what we call decade durable secular trends. For example, we've been playing logistics for 10 years now in China. And when we started, it was, online shopping penetration was 2%. Now it's 25% of all shopping levels. Wow. So that has clearly been a good journey. But even today, with impact of COVID, there's some acceleration. We are still very underserved and underbuilt in terms of logistics infrastructure compared to development levels, right? If you count all the modern logistics in China, there's more modern warehouses in the state of California than the entirety of the country. So even with a pretty long run of capital interest, a lot more development, because of the sheer scale of the demand in a country like China, and that today, most of the developers are still focused on for sale residential, right? So in some of these newer, new economy sectors, we're seeing, very robust demand versus, insufficient supply. And the same goes to other asset classes like data centers, where you have probably 6-7 times of the internet population across Asia compared to developed markets, but 1/10 of the capacity. So, we see with or without the impact of COVID, these are going to play out over the next 10 years, if not more.
So you're excited about logistics, excited about data centers. Are there cities in China that you are particularly excited about where you think this could be the next big thing?
You know, for a lot of these sectors, they are national-wide, right? Obviously, in terms of infrastructure serving, internet usage serving, you know, fulfillment needs of e-commerce players, they are naturally surrounded in major cities, with the more populated cities. But we're seeing sort of new drivers of growth within these bigger food groups, right? Within logistics, it's emerged from a niche sector into a much bigger food group. And there are now new drivers like grocery deliveries, right? Which generates new fulfillment infrastructure across the country, not just the big cities. So there aren't sort of one city or a couple of cities that stand out per se. I think these are trends that are applicable to the broader population across many markets.
Okay. For my final question for you, I also want to bring it back to the awards. As a jury member for a few years now, was there a project this year that you found especially exciting, that you felt like this is something that is very special or different from ones you've seen in the past?
I think from my standpoint, we're very glad to see some of our projects that are managed by our operating partners were made up, you know, won some of the awards, be it ESR winning the Green Award, as well as the new whole category around infrastructure and the asset classes. I think that has been a big progress. And other sectors like even traditional office buildings, some of our portfolio projects have made it to the best green buildings. So those are very special personally to us. In general, I think as some of our earlier speakers have shared, the caliber of some of the mixed-use projects have been quite special, not only in new development, but in the regeneration projects, right? So it also represents a shift from just building, you know, big elephant projects to more operational intensive and paying more attention to sustainability and better uses of resources, be it land or just you know, better uses of space.
Okay, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Ellen Warburg Pincus, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, thank you very much, Ellen. Well, that concludes our conversations with the experts. At this time, I'd like to welcome back Christine Lam, Asia Pacific Regional Director at MIPIM, who will share some final thoughts with us. Christine, hello again.
Thank you, everyone, for having joined us for the speaker program, as well as all of our speakers. Clearly, the real estate industry has lagged behind in technology compared to other industries, Asia especially. So we hope to be able to bring new life to technology. So since 2016, we at MIPIM has launched the startup competition, which brings new innovation ideas to the industry. So please join us for the startup competition, which will begin shortly.
Thank you very much, Christine.
Thank you.